The early 1960s in American history were the final years of innocence. The world came the closest it has ever been to nuclear detonation with the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviet Union put up the Berlin Wall. We grieve the death of John F. Kennedy, and just as President Lyndon Baines Johnson upscales the war against communist aggression in Vietnam, the film Dr. Strangelove is released in 1964. Alternately titled appropriately How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, the film satirizes the grim reality of the Cold War. When a psychotic American general orders his bombers to attack the Soviet Union, the American president and his advisors, along with the Soviet ambassador, attempt to avoid mutually assured destruction. It might not sound like a comedy, but director, writer, and mastermind Stanley Kubrick implements themes on the foolishness of nuclear war and the childlike demeanor of men within our government.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room. What is going on here? I demand an explanation.
It is through Kubrick's use of satire in the film we gain a perspective of how the world visualized the Cold War, the people in charge, and fantasized about its possible and seemingly certain outcome. It's actually pretty fitting that the movie is a comedy, because on the bright side, the whole war was actually a pretty funny predicament. How could society dip this low to make so many poor decisions? World governments were turned against each other, and all because one particular faction happened to be communist. Throughout the 50s and 60s, there was a general Red Scare that took over the Western nations, especially the United States. The US was afraid of entire nations because they had different political beliefs. I mean, you do see the comedy in the situation. It's utterly ridiculous. In the film, the way American officials see the communists is perhaps appropriately exaggerated. At times, it's not even trying to make a joke, it's telling the truth. We laugh because it's so nonsensical. It shows how people at the time saw the situation of the Cold War as just a ridiculous game that caused fear, and the way Kubrick saw it at the time was quite humorous, despite the reality of the situation. On top of all this, you have the people in charge who are responsible for the war. To get in the situations of the Cold War, you had to have a group of people making one bad decision after another. In reality, you had Joseph McCarthy, and to a certain extent Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy, but perhaps their bad decisions could be pointed to their advisors. It made the government seem like the dumbest people on the planet, and this is relevant in Dr. Strangelove through the way Kubrick portrays the political leaders. You have this guy, and this one. These are the president's political advisors, which the repeating theme in history says that they are quite good at making bad decisions. They're all bumbling idiots or insane, and of course they are the ones responsible for the destruction of the world. Dr. Strangelove himself, the man who might be able to end the whole thing, is even alluded to being a former Nazi, and the guy who started the whole thing has a name that sounds like one of the most infamous serial killers in history, believing that the communists are trying to sap and purify all of our precious bodily fluids. And once again, the comedy of the situation is, or was, that this is all true, it's actually happening, and it's hard to believe that stupidity of the situation because no one can win. So despite being the possible end of the world, the Cold War was a bit of a joke. They had a bomb, but they also had a bomb, so therefore everybody loses. People at this time called this MAD, or mutually assured destruction. Basically, everybody in the world was in agreement that if one person was to set it off, then we all die. The whole thing was a joke, and the only way to win was not to play. At the time, we actually believed that the only outcome was that we were all screwed. The film is almost the sealing of our destiny. We can't avoid the war, no matter how many attempts are made to halt it. And even when the Russians and Americans tried to work together, in the end we're all doomed. And in the eyes of Kubrick, and probably many other Americans, was that the only way we could get over it was if we just accepted our fate and learned to stop worrying and love the bomb.